All right, so today I'm going to be talking about Elon Musk's $1 trillion package that he has, his payment package that he's trying to work through Tesla. So he basically hit a $500 billion plateau this year, and more or less he's trying to become the first $1 trillion man, because he's bored, trying to basically show Bezos and everybody else that he's the king. Whatever, fine. I get it. It's a big, it's what they do at the top. They get bored, so they just start kind of fighting with each other just because they're out of their minds. So essentially, what's going to happen is Tesla is going to try to push through a $1 trillion deal for Elon that's based on a 10-year plan. So it started September 5th was when the initiating process started, and it's going to be based on 12 different milestones operationally. So he's going to have to basically try to scale up and tier up through those 10-year period to maximize his outpayment, so that way he basically can become a $1 trillion man. So it is incentive based. It's 100% incentive based. He has no salary or anything unless he's accomplishing these goals. All right, so let's kind of cover a little bit what is the initial goal, right? So the full goal is, like I said, I'm going to read some of this because I'm trying to be as prepared as I possibly can. So sorry if it's a little bit wordy. But basically, the payout of Tesla can reach a sustained capitalization of at least 8.5 trillion. That's the full goal, to make them an $8.5 trillion capitalized company, which would be the highest corporate valuation in history. Just for a little bit of background, what does 8.5 trillion even mean? Well, Tesla's worth currently, as of 11.5, 1.52 trillion. All right, and just for scaling reasons, because you hear big numbers, 8 trillion, 1 trillion, okay, it's a lot of money. All right, well, how much is it, to understand and comprehend? So what it is the entire U.S. domestic gross product, so the GDP of the U.S. is 29 trillion as of 2024. So not 2025, but last year. So what does that mean? Well, Tesla would basically be a third of the whole U.S. GDP at that point. Obviously within 10 years, obviously that's going to go up for the U.S. also. But just for, for imagery purposes, 8.5 trillion, like I said, is basically a third of our whole economy, a little bit over. What that compares to also is it would be the equivalent, 8.5 trillion would be the equivalent of roughly the entire GDP of nations such as Japan and Germany combined. Okay, so obviously we're the U.S., so we kind of have a different measuring tool of success, right? And our GDP is way higher than other nations. So it would basically be, triple that of, those nations. It would be, like I said, demonstratively big compared to those countries. So, like I said, the structure of this deal is that it's 100% at risk. Elon would get zero salary or guaranteed bonuses. The award or the $1 trillion deal would be broken into 12 separate milestones or tranches. He gets nothing unless the company both hits its market cap of the 8.5 trillion and can deliver the goals of operations, which we'll get into what are those goals in a little bit here. But basically, like I said, the first milestone alone would require Tesla, their value to jump up $1 trillion from what it is right now, which, like I said, it's at 1.5 trillion. So the first milestone would still be another trillion just to get to the first tier of the 12-tier milestone, which is, like I said, a pretty big milestone to hit. And essentially, the whole goal is why is it 8.5 trillion? The board is basically trying to keep Elon on as long as they can and also keep his focus because obviously he does SpaceX. Those rockets are going up pretty much every day now. And he also has Boring Company, like I said, Neuralink, all these different companies that he's running. So they're basically trying to get his attention back to Tesla and just try to, basically capture the market and just make sure the shareholders are getting paid out big. So that's more or less what the reason is to keep Elon focused mostly on Tesla and get him kind of off of everything else. So operationally, I'm going to go over what the milestones are operationally and the risks of those, or contrast and risks to those milestones, and then kind of go over an analysis at the end. So the foundation is he has to deliver 20 million cumulative vehicles over a 10-year term. So that's Tesla. So he has to deliver 20 million vehicles over the 10-year term, Tesla specific. So like I said, that's his first basis of the foundation right there. The second is he also has to do 1 million self-driving robotaxis in commercial operation. So what does that mean? Currently in Austin and other big cities in the Bay Area, they have a total, from what I read, and you can cross-reference, they have a total of 1,500 vehicles or are trying to hit a total of 1,500 vehicles by late 2025. So the end of this year, they're trying to get 1,500 vehicles that are just robo-taxis, okay? And they do have them in Austin currently. They have a few in Austin already. But more or less, they're trying to take that from 1,500 up to 1 million within a 10-year period, okay? So, like I said, they're going to be fully driverless, and basically, they're going to do Uber Eats, Uber essentially. They're going to bring you places. It's a robo-taxi. So they're going to be delivering you or goods using, their vehicles, such as Tesla Model Ys or whatever they're going to use. So that's the second one. The third one is to deliver 1 million Optimus humanoid robots. All right, so that's going to be an interesting one too. Like I said, because they're obviously making robo-taxis that are driverless, so all those people that are doing Uber Eats and whatnot are going to be gone. They're not going to have a required job because they're not, they have driverless cars. Why would they need them? So now the next one that's going to be the biggest impact also is 1 million Optimus robots in that 10-year period. So this is the most speculative target, requires creating a useful mass manufacturable general purpose robot, which, like I said, he does have some prototypes, obviously, that he's pushing out that I've seen online. So as of late 2025, Optimus production is in the low hundreds of prototype and pilot units. So like I said, that's just the pilots and prototypes that they have right now. They're not really in mass production yet. They're trying to work out the kinks to mass produce at this time. And the company has reported scaled back its initial 5,000 units 2025 due to technical challenges. So their initial goal was 5,000 to hit in 2025, and they've had some issues, obviously trying to get everything critiqued and hunkered down so that way they can mass produce them. So like I said, but to keep in mind here, 1 million Optimuses, okay, just for saying sake, just for, like I said, a visual, 1 million robots would be the equivalent to the state of Delaware and Rhode Island and Montana. So those 3 states have 1 million people in them, okay, population-wise. So more or less, they would be creating Optimuses at scale, and it would be the equivalent of 3 states. So like I said, there would be the equivalent of Rhode Island, Delaware, and Montana of just robots, more or less, if they, separately, not all together, not the 3 states together, because that'd be 3 million. But as far as the states, for just the imagery purpose, like I said, just imagine those 3 states only have robots, okay, as far as our population goes. So like I said, that's a lot of robots. And like I said, this is a 10-year deal. So like I said, this is from September 2025 up until, 35, obviously, 10 years later. So that's a lot. That's a lot of robots. And like I said, there's going to be, say what you want. Obviously, Amazon just had a huge layoff, which I'm going to try to touch a little bit on that tomorrow. But Amazon laid off a bunch of people, 20,000 people or so, which is, not a small city. It's probably like a quarter of, a smaller city such as like Utica, New York, or, it'd be about a quarter of a city in Orlando, Florida, for example. And those people all have no jobs currently. They got let go. And they're going to be let go. So they're going to be replaced by like these robots, and that's what's going to be, the next generation. So like I said, within the whole point of me talking about this stuff is just to kind of create awareness and to try to rationalize a little bit the numbers, what it is and how much it represents. Because like I said, it's going to be a lot ramping up here in the next 10 years. And obviously we're already experiencing job loss, layoffs, things like that without any replacement ideology in place. More or less, they're just kind of doing what they want. All the big companies are kind of laying people off. They're saving on salaries to basically pick up AI and automation. So like I said, it's going to be cheaper than hiring a person. So it's going to be a hurdle to come. But like I said, I wanted to emphasize this deal with Elon because he is obviously a big producer of these products and these things such as robots, robo-taxis that are going to be taking place. Obviously, this is a hyper-aggressive pay plan, and like I said, it is based on his output specifically. So it is, it is based on performance. So whether or not he can hit those goals is another thing. But like I said, I mean, if that is the goal, though, Elon's going to hit some sort of goal, whether it's 1 million or if it's 750,000, it's still a lot of robots that he's going to hit. So like I said, just kind of keep that in mind going forward. Like I said, not trying to raise a flag, make people paranoid. The robots are coming to kill us. Nothing like that. I'm just trying to, like I said, try to create what this means for everybody. And also, like I said, just to kind of have that understanding. Okay, so let me see. Is there anything else I want to talk about? Oh, so that's another thing also that is important to understand. Like I said, some of the business people and finance people will understand this a little bit better than others. But so essentially, upon hitting these milestones, he is going to get stock. The stock itself will not be vested though, so basically he won't be able to sell until 7.5 to 10 years. So that's when he's actively able to sell. So that means he's really going to be pushing because, like I said, all the profitability, all that stuff, he's going to get in the end. So, like I said, it's forward, looking. So he's not going to get it right away. So all of his efforts he will not realize until 7.5 to 10 years in, because that's when the payoffs are going to happen. So he's going to be hyper motivated, hyper trying to get things going and getting him, like I said, mass produced within those first 7 years. So that way he can reap the benefit after that. Okay. So it's a little bit different, like I said, than if you make like 50,000 a year, compared to this. This is a very separate thing from that. There is no salary. It's all performance based. And within the next 7 years, he's going to basically make nothing until he gets that vested stock of 7.5 to 10 years, which that's when, depending on what he makes and what they can output and sell is when he's going to reap those benefits. So, like I said, I hope this was at least informational and a little bit, like I said, just kind of opening some horizons for you. And like I said, feel free to look into this. I would highly recommend it because it's going to affect us at our own level, whether it's a big community or small community. Like I said, we're already seeing it nationwide with a lot of jobs going away and not being replaced and people kind of starting to feel desperate, look desperate. And if you don't see it, that's great. I think that's awesome. You're in the cloud. You're not dealing with it like normal people. So that's great for you. And I think, hey, go to the island, have fun, go on vacation, live the dream. But like I said, as far as like the working man goes, people that rely on salaries, like I said, just things to be aware of. Like I said, just try to kind of optimize yourself because like I said, there are these things that are going to be coming to replace certain jobs in certain industries more heavily than others, obviously. But like I said, just if you are in those industries, just be aware of, the things that are going to be here in the next 10 years and to try to, like I said, optimize yourself, diversify your talents, things like that. Okay. But that's it for me. Just wanted to kind of have this little powwow and hopefully give you some good information and hopefully make it so that way it was understandable. But thank you guys for watching and have a wonderful day.